This podcast is made possible by you, the supporters of WPLN and WNXP, Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's March 19th, 2026. On this day in 2019, a beautiful natural phenomenon was spotted from space. A superbloom of poppy flowers near Santa Barbara, California. Hillsides along Interstate 15 near Lake Elsinore were carpeted in orange flowers. Even from 480 miles above the planet, a satellite image captured the vivid bursts of color. It also showed the long line of cars as people idled for miles, waiting their turn to see the flowers in person. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with some context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. Masses of flowers don't back up traffic the same way in Tennessee that they do out on the West Coast. That's partly because our hills are almost always covered in lush vegetation instead of dry scrub, so we're maybe not as hungry to see that kind of thing. And technically, by one definition of the word superbloom, that desert environment is necessary in order to have the phenomenon at all. Some use the term to specifically mean explosions of floral growth that happen in the desert after a year with a lot of rain. But it's not really a technical term. It does have other definitions. And some people use it to describe any natural mass blooming event where a large area is taken over by one kind of wildflower for a little while. And we do get those here. Right now, in fact, is the time each year when some fields around Nashville become seas of tiny yellow flowers. That's because of a mustard superbloom. Elmington Park is full of that wildflower. So are the Steeplechase Lawn at Warner Parks and the entrance to Fort Negley. In fact, the Friends of Fort Negley are planning an event to celebrate the mustard superbloom this weekend. RSVPs are required, so reach out to them if you're interested in going. Now, the mustard plants are remnants of the time before mass settlement changed our local landscape. You definitely won't see traces of that flower anywhere folks have applied weed and feed to their lawns. When you do see it, you can bet you're in an area where bison once roamed freely. One of the primary ways the seed pods were spread around this area were on the feet of those massive grazing animals. Another local superbloom that we can enjoy some years is along the Shelby Bottoms Greenway around the end of summer. The meadows there used to be full of mown grass. But after they were restored to a more natural state where native plants could thrive, it filled with tickweed sunflowers. Now, those aren't the dinner plate size flowers with giant brown centers that you might imagine when someone says the word sunflower. They're still quite tall, but with bushy greenery and a profusion of smaller golden blooms. Of course, wildflowers don't need to bloom in huge masses of single species to be impressive. Somewhere around the turn from spring into summer, the Cedar Glades in Wilson and Rutherford counties put on a show with a variety of delicate flowers in a variety of shades. Those are all the more impressive because some of the most beautiful flowers seem to be growing directly out of the limestone outcroppings. And while I'm at it, I can't help but mention that this is the time to drive through the handful of Nashville neighborhoods where streets have been planted in flowering cherry trees. Are they natives? No. But man, are they gorgeous. I always make sure to spend a little extra time each spring on Murphy Road out on the west side for exactly that reason. And while it's far from a wildflower, there's something really special at this time of year about spotting daffodils out in Land Between the Lakes. That area is given over to nature now, but people used to live there before the Corps of Engineers took it over. And you can see just where the houses used to be from the lines of daffodils that were originally planted around the foundations of those homes. The buildings are long gone, but the plants have survived and keep blooming as an echo of another time. In just a few minutes, we hear from the president of Tennessee State University. That's coming up after the newscast.
You've got a lot of things to keep track of. Work schedules, family activities, the ever-growing list of things you need to remember to do. Updating the credit card or banking information for your sustaining membership may have slipped your mind. With just 2 minutes of your time, you can update your payment information and check one more thing off your list. Peace of mind for you, funding for your public radio station. Go online to WPLN.org.
here's the latest from WPLN News. Lawyers for the Nashville reporter detained by federal immigration agents say they believe she will be released today. A judge granted bond to Estefany Rodriguez-Flores earlier this week after hearing arguments that she was arrested without a warrant, but ICE appealed the decision and kept her behind bars. According to a statement from the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition, the judge held a phone conference yesterday asking for a formal notice when she's released and briefings on any issues that arise going forward. Attorneys for the federal government had argued she does not qualify for the legal protections granted to permanent residents. Her lawyers say Rodriguez-Flores entered the country legally, is married to a U.S. citizen, and had a valid work visa. For the third week in a row, the Republican supermajority in the Tennessee House has delayed hearing bills related to immigration enforcement. One measure that did manage to get to the House floor for a vote earlier this week would make being undocumented a criminal offense rather than a civil one. But several other bills have been pushed back into committee. And where they end up can make a difference. On the House floor, spectators are limited to balconies that are not always visible to lawmakers. Cesar Bautista with the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition says that while in committee, lawmakers are face-to-face with dozens of protesters who show up every time these bills are heard.
It's just a testament of their power of being here present, and that for legislators to see the faces of the families who are going to be impacted. And obviously that makes it challenging for them as well to go through with a lot of these bills.
These measures are scheduled to be heard on Monday. They include bills that would deny immigrants the ability to obtain a nursing license and make it so that doctors and schools must track and report undocumented immigrants. Local governments can limit what and where developers build through zoning laws and land use restrictions. But starting next year, that could change in Tennessee. WPLN's Caroline Eggers explains a proposed bill could gut zoning.
It would work like this. A local government passes a zoning law or other restriction on land use after mid-2027. A property owner, likely a developer, can request an exemption to the law. If the government says no, then the landowner can sue the government for lost property value plus attorney fees and cost. That shifts power to developers. Micah Wood of the American Planning Association says the bill gives a legal advantage to developers and creates financial liability for communities.
In practice, this bill would function as an immediate freeze on zoning, land use, growth management, and farmland protection regulations across Tennessee.
Through regulations, local governments might want to address Airbnbs or landfills, data centers, and factories, or maybe limit dense housing due to flooding concerns. But if the bill passes, governments could be sued for this type of planning, while taxpayers would pay the legal cost. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
The bill will be heard by both the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. 3 Tennessee teenagers are suing Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company xAI, alleging that it knowingly created and distributed child sexual abuse material using their images. The teens, which include 2 minors, filed the lawsuit in a federal court in California this week, and they're seeking class action status for others whose images were manipulated by Grok. The Memphis Commercial Appeal reports multiple families were notified after the arrest of a man who fed xAI's bot photos of teenage girls and asked it to undress them and put them in sexually suggestive situations. The teens in the lawsuit allege that Grok was designed to create sexually explicit material and failed to implement industry-standard guardrails. This lawsuit is just one of a wave filed following the onslaught of sexual deepfakes produced by Grok earlier this year. xAI has faced a different kind of backlash in Memphis, where it operates an enormous data center. Residents have complained the generators used to power the site are causing serious air and noise pollution that has impacted their quality of life. Social factors like poor access to food play a major role in health outcomes. The state's largest insurer took a look at the numbers and found that location makes some struggles more likely than others. Blue Cross Blue Shield insures about half of the people living in the state. It looked at data for 2 million of those members for a report on social barriers. The Tennessean lists the most common obstacles by region. Middle Tennessee had the most struggles with safe housing. In West Tennessee, it was debt burden. And in East Tennessee, food insecurity. Davidson County ranked in the bottom 5 for several health indicators, such as follow-up visits after mental health hospitalizations. Well, from vinyl records to CDs to digital playlists, technology has transformed the way people listen to music. And this new wave of paid streaming platforms like Spotify and Tidal have replaced how we purchase music and also how artists get paid. On our daily show, This is Nashville, songwriter Olivia Rudine and CSAC's Lydia Schultz-Cahill explained that not long ago, an artist could earn money simply by landing a song on an album. That's no longer the case.
I'll talk to older writers in sessions, and they, their track 18 on the Target Deluxe edition of Brooks and Dunn got them a house.
Oh, yeah. If you had a Garth Brooks cut, you were good.
Yeah.
But that goes to the mechanicals. So people were buying the physical copies of the CDs. So you would be making money off of that.
Songwriting Week continues today at noon with Rivers Rutherford and rising artists Joy Beth Taylor and Reese Rutherford in the studio to take your calls. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. WPLN's Investigation the Debt takes a deep dive into the state's underfunding of Tennessee State University. To continue this reporting, WPLN education reporter Camelia Burris sat down with TSU's new president to learn more about how he is spearheading the historically black university's financial turnaround.
President Dwayne Tucker says that improving customer service at Tennessee State University was his top priority when he was appointed by the school's Board of Trustees a little more than a year ago.
To some degree, people were doing their own thing that they wanted to do, and we were not working collaboratively together to move the university forward. So the first thing we had to focus on was ensuring that if a student had an issue that was raised, such as a financial aid, does somebody respond back to them within a reasonable time? And then you see all these stories on local social media, and sometimes you guys, that says, hey, I got this outstanding balance and I don't know where it came from. Well, because the systems weren't talking to each other effectively.
Showing us around his office, Tucker explains his conservative approach to fiscal management.
Just run a tight ship. Yeah. Make the hard decision.
And what are you most proud of for this financial turnaround? Like, what's something that you feel you're happiest about?
The biggest opportunity for us that I'm most pleased about is how the cabinet all worked together and our trustees to be able to reach agreement with the state of Tennessee to access the remaining of the $250 million that was appropriated about 3 years ago. That's the foundation of why we now have stability and we have consistent cash flows so we can reimagine Tennessee State between now and 2030.
Tucker's reimagination plan includes a lot of cost cutting, like scaling back on the food budget for staff meetings. But there are some lines he won't cross, like refusing to sell the Avon Williams downtown campus.
We don't want to sacrifice our potential growth by selling the downtown campus. I think the downtown campus is an opportunity by working with the developers where you could get a reoccurring revenue for them by them developing some of the areas in which we have assets.
One of those assets is the 35 acres of property near John C. Toon Airport that the school owns. And Tucker has some more immediate ideas to generate revenue, like charging for parking on campus, and he's come up with a creative way to tap revenue from homecoming merchandising.
The biggest shakedown that happens is homecoming for Tennessee State. They're selling merchandise that has our logo and our copyright with it. They're not giving anything back to the university. So for homecoming this year, back to your revenue question, we set up tents all around the track in the current Hale Stadium. And then if you wanted to sell merchandise that had our name on it, you had to come in, pay a fee for your tent, and then give us a piece of what you sell.
Tucker acknowledges the fondness of TSU alumni and that HBCUs offer students a sense of community not always found at other schools. But he knows that's not a strategy for getting the state to make good on decades of underfunding its only public historically black university. The state says it shortchanged TSU $544 million in land grant funding. But there's other money owed to TSU based on calculations by the Biden administration, totaling more than $2 billion. What was your reaction when you first heard that number?
Well, that's interesting. My best answer to that one is do your own homework and take a look at it and determine what you believe to be true. So now, if you ask me which one is the right, it's somewhere between 544 and 2.1 billion. To go walk into your legislative body and say, hey, I know y'all don't believe it, so the only way I'm gonna get it out of you is to sue you. That's gonna take a decade or more. And if I'm the legislative body, I'd say, well, how do you want me to keep funding you when you're trying to sue us for 2.1 billion? It just doesn't fit, in my opinion.
So Tucker is willing to play the long game. Practical, consistent, patient, unemotional.
I do know how to try to run an efficient organization and an efficient university and drive outcomes for those who come to Tennessee State. I think if I do that well, we do that collectively as a board of trustees and leadership team, then I'm a little old school, then things just take care of themselves because people like to be tied to a winner or an organization that seems to be excelling at what you do. That's my focus. And then how people want to vote on it, I leave it up to them.
Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
You can learn more about TSU's decades-long fight for fair funding from the state of Tennessee in our investigation, The Debt, produced in collaboration with the Tennessee Lookout. Find it at WPLN.org or in the This Is Nashville podcast feed. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener-supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.